Welcome to the Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where every cup tells a story, and every story starts with a sip. Join us on a journey of adventure, camaraderie, and of course, the finest brews, served hot and steeped in mystery. From dragons to ancient legends, we're brewing up more than just coffee. Today's tale begins with a quiet morning at Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, but when a curious young hatchling discovers the kitchen, a simple lesson in responsibility turns into a whirlwind of flour, fire, caramel, and chaos. As Java and Nyved face their biggest test yet, the crew learns that family doesn't always arrive with warning. Sometimes it crashes in covered in sugar and looking for trouble. Now, grab your mug, settle in, and get ready for the next chapter in our brewing saga. Season 2, Episode 21, A Sticky Beginning. Morning settled over Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern in the familiar rhythm of organized chaos. The great hearth crackled beneath its hanging kettle, filling the tavern with warmth as the scent of roasted coffee drifted through the common room. Fresh bread cooled on wooden racks. Cinnamon lingered in the air. Somewhere beneath it all was the unmistakable sharp edge of spice that always seemed to follow Nyved no matter how often he insisted he had cleaned out his satchel. Behind the main counter, Java carefully adjusted the flame beneath a polished brass brewer. Steam curled upward as dark coffee bubbled and hissed. Across from him, Nyved hovered suspiciously close to a tray of freshly baked pastries, his bright blue eyes fixed intently on the nearest one. He was trying very hard to look casual.
Touch one and you'll spend the next hour grinding beans by hand.
Nyved froze mid-reach. Slowly, he turned. Patches stood behind him with her arms folded, her tail giving an amused flick.
I was checking for quality.
You were checking for opportunity.
Quality opportunity.
From across the room, Bradicus let out a low chuckle as he tightened the iron hinge on one of the tavern's heavy oak shutters.
Bold strategy. Shame it's never worked.
One of these days, all of you will appreciate my culinary expertise.
If by expertise you mean stealing pastries before they cool, then yes. We've noticed.
Nyved gave an exaggerated huff and folded his wings tightly against his sides. Today, however, was not about pastries. At the center of the tavern's largest cushion chair sat a woven basket lined with thick blankets. Something shifted beneath the folds. A tiny chirp filled the room. Then a small orange snout emerged, followed by wide caramel-colored eyes blinking sleepily at the world around them. The hatchling pushed free of the blankets and looked around with quiet curiosity. Creamy orange scales shimmered softly in the firelight, while the ridges along his back carried the faintest salmon tint. Java leaned forward, tilting his head. A grin spread across his face.
Well, someone's finally smaller than me.
Don't get used to the feeling.
The hatchling gave an uncertain little trill. Then, with the absolute confidence of something too young to understand consequences, he climbed over the basket's edge. He landed in an awkward heap on the floor. He blinked, shook himself off, and immediately waddled toward the kitchen. Patches smiled.
Determined.
Tiny.
Yes, that too.
Nyved stepped forward, his expression brightening.
This is perfect.
That sentence never ends well.
No, really. This is exactly what I need.
Should I be worried?
This is my chance to prove I can handle real responsibility.
Bradicus straightened from the shutter and raised an eyebrow.
Ah.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means confidence before experience tends to become everyone else's problem.
I know what I'm doing.
You set your own tail on fire trying to toast bread 3 weeks ago.
That loaf was defective.
It was raw dough.
Nyved waved dismissively.
If you two are serious about helping, listen carefully.
Both dragons immediately straightened. The hatchling slipped, tumbled backward into a pile of folded linens, and chirped indignantly. Patches didn't even glance over.
You don't teach responsibility by preventing every mistake.
Exactly.
I wasn't agreeing with you.
Java smirked. Nyved frowned. Patches nodded toward the hatchling.
You let him try difficult things. You just make sure the consequences teach instead of harm.
So if he climbs something,
You spot him unless it's something he shouldn't be on at all.
if he carries something hot,
You guide him.
If he makes a mess.
He helps clean it.
Accountability builds confidence.
And confidence builds judgment.
This sounds suspiciously like fun with extra rules.
Now you're learning.
At that exact moment, the hatchling reached the top of the flour sack. He stood there proudly, chest puffed out in triumph. For one glorious second. Then the entire sack tipped. It crashed to the floor. A cloud of white flour exploded across the kitchen. Silence followed. As the powder slowly settled, the hatchling sat squarely in the center of the mess, looking thoroughly pleased with himself. Java and Nyved stare. Bradicus slowly brushed flour from his beard. The hatchling sneezed. A tiny burst of warm air sent another puff of flour into the room. Patches pinched the bridge of her nose. From her quiet seat near the hearth, Fate's Scold finally looked up from her tea. Her pale eyes rested on the tiny flour-covered dragon.
Well, this day has chosen chaos.
The hatchling chirped brightly. Nyved grinned.
Oh, I like him already.
At that moment, none of them could have guessed just how thoroughly that tiny dragon intended to test that opinion before the day was done. By mid-morning, the tavern had settled into its usual rhythm. The breakfast rush had thinned, the tables were half full with lingering customers nursing second cups of coffee, and the steady hum of conversation blended with the clink of mugs and the crackle of the hearth. Under normal circumstances, it was the sort of balance Dungeon Brew had learned to maintain. Today was not normal circumstances. The hatchling had discovered movement. And with that discovery came an apparently unstoppable determination to investigate absolutely everything. He darted from one corner of the kitchen to the next with relentless curiosity, his tiny claws clicking against the wooden floor as he investigated every barrel, basket, and low shelf within reach. If something could be climbed, he attempted it. If something could be sniffed, he shoved his nose directly into it. If something looked remotely interesting, it immediately became his entire purpose in life. Java and Nyved were already beginning to understand that watching him was less a task and more a full-body endurance trial.
How is something that small this fast?
I think he's speeding up.
That shouldn't be possible.
And yet,
The hatchling had somehow wedged himself halfway into a storage cubby beneath the prep counter, his hind legs kicking furiously as he attempted to pull himself deeper inside. Nyved grabbed his tail and gently tugged him free. The little dragon emerged triumphantly with an entire cloth napkin clenched in his teeth.
That is not treasure.
I don't know. He looks pretty proud of himself.
The hatchling gave a pleased chirp and shook the napkin vigorously before trotting off toward the pantry. Nyved sighed.
I was promised responsibility. This feels suspiciously like babysitting.
That's because it is babysitting.
No, babysitting implies occasional stillness. This is tactical pursuit.
Across the kitchen, Patches was carefully arranging trays for the next batch of pastries. Without looking up, she nodded toward a stack of small mixing bowls near the prep table.
Then stop chasing him. Teach him.
Nyved and Java exchanged glances. Patches gestured toward the bowls.
Bring him here. If he wants to be involved, give him something to do.
You trust him with kitchen work?
I trust all living creatures to make mistakes. That's why we make sure the mistakes happen where they can be learned from.
Java gave a slow nod. Nyved looked less convinced. Still, he crouched low and called toward the pantry.
Hey, tiny menace. Come here.
The hatchling poked his flour-dusted head around the doorway. His caramel-colored eyes locked on Nyved. Then he bounded forward at full speed. Straight into Nyved's chest. The impact knocked the larger dragon backward onto the floor. Java burst out laughing.
Controlled chaos. Looks like he's learning.
I'm going to season your cider later.
The hatchling climbed onto Nyved's stomach and chirped proudly as though he had just won a great battle. Patches set one of the small mixing bowls on the floor beside him. Inside was a simple task: measured flour, a spoon, and a small amount of water.
Let him stir. Guide him if he needs it.
The hatchling immediately shoved both front claws into the bowl. Nyved winced.
That is not stirring. That is assault.
He's improvising.
Despite the mess, the hatchling quickly became focused on the task. He poked, mixed, splashed, and occasionally sneezed into the batter, but with careful guidance from Java and increasingly reluctant assistance from Nyved, something resembling progress began to take shape. For nearly 10 whole minutes, the kitchen remained intact. Then the smell hit. It was sudden and unmistakable. Warm caramel, rich cinnamon, sweet vanilla. The scent drifted from the mixing bowl in curling waves. Java frowned.
Did anyone add sugar?
Not unless flour has gotten way more interesting.
The batter had begun to shimmer faintly. Tiny amber sparks flickered across its surface. The hatchling stared at it with intense concentration, his salmon-colored ridges glowing ever so slightly brighter. Patches stepped closer.
Interesting.
The little dragon gave an excited chirp and plunged both claws deeper into the bowl. Instantly, the mixture puffed upward in a burst of sparkling steam. A shower of sticky caramel droplets splattered across the prep table. One landed squarely on Nyved's snout. He blinked, licked it experimentally. His eyes widened.
That is absurdly good.
You tasted mystery batter?
It was on my face. That's legally different.
The hatchling chirped louder, clearly delighted by the reaction. He reached eagerly for the bowl again. This time, Java gently moved it out of reach.
Hold on. Let's figure out what just happened before he invents something explosive.
From her chair near the hearth, Fate Scold had been watching the entire exchange with quiet interest. She set down her teacup. Her pale gaze lingered on the sticky amber mixture, then shifted to the hatchling.
Curious.
That's your thoughtful voice. I always pay attention to your thoughtful voice.
The hatchling, meanwhile, had become entirely fixated on the caramel-coated spoon resting on the counter. With surprising agility, he leapt upward, caught the edge of the table, hauled himself onto the surface, and immediately buried his face in the spoon. His tiny wings fluttered with visible delight. Java stared. Nyved slowly looked at Patches, then at the spoon, then back at the hatchling.
Okay. That is definitely not normal dragon behavior.
No, it isn't.
The hatchling gave another happy chirp and licked the spoon clean, his ridges glowing brighter than before. Across the room, Fate's expression sharpened ever so slightly. She said nothing, but the thoughtful crease forming between her brows told the others what her silence would not. Something about this little dragon was beginning to reveal itself. And whatever it was, they were only just beginning to understand it. By early afternoon, the tavern was busier than usual. Word had spread through the nearby roads and village that Dungeon Brew's seasonal pastries were fresh from the ovens, and with the autumn festival beginning just beyond the crossroads, travelers had begun pouring through the doors in steady waves. The common room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Mugs clinked. Chairs scraped against the wooden floor. The rich scent of coffee and spice drifted through every corner of the tavern. And in the middle of it all, the hatchling was having the best day of his very short life. The earlier kitchen experiment had changed everything. What at first seemed like random magical outbursts was beginning to show a pattern. Whenever the little dragon was near sweets, pastries, or anything rich with sugar and spice, strange things happened. Batter rose faster. Frosting shimmered. Cinnamon rolls came out of the oven with perfect golden swirls no one had shaped by hand. At first, Nyved had insisted this was clearly evidence of genius. Specifically, his genius. No one had agreed. Still, the discovery had shifted the hatchling's entire focus. He had become absolutely obsessed with anything remotely dessert-related. At present, he was perched atop the prep counter with his nose buried in a cooling tray of sugared pastries while Java stood guard beside him.
You get one. One. That is the agreement.
The hatchling chirped innocently through a mouthful of pastry. Java narrowed his eyes.
That was definitely your second.
Technically, if he inhaled the first one whole, that might still count as one continuous pastry.
That is not how counting works.
You can't prove that.
Across the kitchen, Patches slid another tray into the warming oven.
Less debating. More watching. If he's this drawn to sweets, we need to know how much control he has over whatever he's doing.
The hatchling perked up at the word sweets and immediately leapt toward a bowl of cinnamon sugar waiting nearby. Nyved intercepted him midair. Barely.
Nope. Not unsupervised. You've officially lost free roaming dessert privileges.
The hatchling twisted in his grasp and gave an indignant chirp that somehow sounded deeply offended. Bradicus glanced over from the front counter where he was carrying a tray of fresh drinks to waiting customers.
Congratulations. You've been judged by something that still trips over its own tail.
I'm feeling very unsupported right now.
Then the front doors swung wide. A fresh wave of festival-goers entered all at once, bringing cool autumn air and a sudden swell of voices. Java looked toward the common room and immediately straightened.
That's a lot of people.
Afternoon rush. Right on time.
Positions, everyone. Move.
The tavern shifted instantly into practiced motion. Bradicus moved through the common room with efficient calm, directing guests to open tables. Java hurried to the brewers, already adjusting heat levels for multiple orders. Patches began plating pastries with rapid precision. Nyved still held the squirming hatchling. He looked from the growing crowd to the little dragon in his claws. Then to Java.
What do we do with him?
Watch him. That was the assignment.
Yes, but while doing tavern things?
That's what responsibility means.
This feels like a trick.
Patches crossed to them and set a small wooden crate beside the prep station. Inside sat measuring spoons, mixing bowls, and a modest pile of cinnamon sticks.
Give him a task. Keep him engaged. Structured challenge.
Right. Controlled danger. I remember.
Good. And Nyved?
Yeah.
If he starts glowing, call someone. Immediately.
That feels like information you could have shared earlier.
You didn't ask.
Before Nyved could protest further, the hatchling spotted the cinnamon sticks. His eyes widened. He chirped with unmistakable excitement. Then he launched himself directly into the crate. The resulting explosion of cinnamon sent a reddish-brown cloud billowing into the air. Nyved coughed. Java sneezed. Bradicus, somehow, did neither.
Impressive. He's weaponized bacon.
For the next several minutes, things somehow held together. The hatchling enthusiastically stirred dry ingredients while Nyved supervised. Java bounced between the brewers and prep station. Customers laughed in the common room, completely unaware of the magical uncertainty unfolding just beyond the kitchen doors. And then Nyved made one very small mistake. He looked away. Only for a second. Just long enough to answer Java's question about spice ratios. When he looked back, the crate was empty. Nyved froze.
Java,
Why did you say my name like that?
hypothetically, if a baby dragon were no longer where he was supposed to be,
Nyved.
and if that dragon happened to be magically connected to desserts,
Nyved!
Both dragons turned. The hatchling was gone. For one long, terrible moment, the kitchen fell silent. Then came a sound from deeper inside the tavern. A metallic crash, followed by delighted chirping. And then, the unmistakable whoosh of enchanted oven fire surging to life. Patch's head snapped toward the back kitchen. Fate's scold slowly rose from her chair. Bradicus set down his serving tray.
That doesn't sound good.
I had him for 1 second.
The dragons bolted toward the rear kitchen. The others followed close behind. And as they rounded the corner, they were greeted by a sight none of them would soon forget. The hatchling stood triumphantly atop the central prep table. Around him, every enchanted oven in the room had ignited at once. Golden caramel bubbled over unattended pots. Sugar crystals floated through the air like glowing embers. Frosting spiraled upward in twisting ribbons. And at the center of it all, the tiny orange dragon sneezed. A burst of shimmering heat shot outward. The nearest tray of pastries exploded into a storm of sparkling cream puffs. The hatchling chirped happily. The others stared in stunned silence. Then Nyved whispered the only thing anyone could possibly say.
Okay. That might actually be my fault.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Adventurers, travelers, and coffee lovers alike. Welcome to Dungeon Brew Coffee. Whether you crave the boldest brew, a magical chai, or a sweet spice cider, we've got something to fuel every quest. Sip it at home with our online blends, or catch us live at events across Virginia, and soon in West Virginia and North Carolina, as we bring the tavern experience straight to you. And here's a little extra loot for your journeys. Keep your lemonade cup and bring it back to any event we're at and save $1 on your refill. That's one more treasure for your pocket. So, whether you're chasing dragons or deadlines, make Dungeon Brew Coffee your first stop, because every great day begins with a magical cup in hand.
And now, back to our show. For half a second, no one moved. The rear kitchen had become a storm of sugar and fire. Golden caramel boiled over the edges of iron pots, hissing where it struck the hot stone floor. Frosting spiraled through the air in thick glowing ribbons, wrapping around hanging utensils and pulling them into slow, dizzying circles. The enchanted ovens roared with amber light, their doors rattling against their hinges as waves of unstable heat rolled through the room. And in the center of it all, the hatchling stood proudly atop the prep table, entirely convinced he had done something wonderful. Then the nearest caramel pot exploded. Sticky molten sugar splattered across the room. That was all it took. Bradicus moved. He was across the kitchen in an instant, his years of discipline collapsing thought into instinct. One powerful sweep of his arm shoved Java and Nyved backward just as a ribbon of glowing caramel lashed across the space where they had been standing. It struck the stone wall instead. The impact sent up a spray of sparks.
Family first. Clean up second. Move.
The command snapped through the chaos like a blade. The room sprang into motion. Java darted toward the side ovens, quickly shutting vents to cut the enchanted airflow feeding the magical surge. Patches vaulted over an overturned prep stool and grabbed a heavy wool blanket, throwing it over the nearest caramel fire before it could spread. Nyved, however, froze. His bright blue eyes locked on the hatchling. The little dragon had gone still. The confidence was gone now. His caramel-colored eyes had widened with fear as the kitchen magic spiraled far beyond his control. The salmon ridges along his back glowed brighter and brighter, pulsing with unstable energy. He let out a frightened chirp, and instead of running from the danger, he ran straight toward Nyved. The tiny dragon stumbled across the prep table, claws scraping frantically against the wood as another pulse of heat burst from his body. A rack of cooling pastries tipped. Heavy iron trays crashed toward him. For one terrible instant, Nyved couldn't move. Then he felt Bradicus' hand grip his shoulder. Solid. Steady. Grounding.
Fear's fine. Immobility isn't.
The words hit harder than any shouted order could have. Something in Nyved shifted. This wasn't about proving himself. This wasn't about showing off or finally earning recognition. This was family. And family moved. Nyved launched himself forward. He hit the edge of the prep table just as the trays came crashing down. With a sharp burst of controlled flame, he redirected the falling metal sideways, sending it clattering harmlessly into an empty corner. The hatchling collided with his chest. Nyved wrapped both forelegs around him instinctively. The little dragon trembled violently.
Hey, it's all right. I've got you.
But another pulse surged through the hatchling. The glow intensified. The air around them shimmered. A fresh wave of magic erupted outward. Across the kitchen, sugar jars burst open all at once. Crystals swirled into the air like a glittering storm. Java glanced over and immediately changed course. Instead of continuing toward the ovens, he sprinted back toward Nyved. He planted himself beside his larger brother and spread his wings wide, shielding both of them as shards of crystallized sugar rained down around them.
Talk to him. Keep him focused. I'll handle the rest.
Nyved blinked. There was no panic in Java's voice. No hesitation. Only calm. Only certainty. And somehow that steadied him. He looked down at the trembling hatchling curled against him.
Okay. Listen to me. You're all right. Nobody's mad. You just need to breathe.
The little dragon looked up at him, frightened and confused. His ridges still glowed. The magical pressure in the room continued to build. Then Patches appeared at Nyved's side. She crouched low, meeting the hatchling at eye level. Her voice was firm but calm.
You made a mess? That means you helped fix it. Can you do that?
The hatchling blinked. His frightened chirping softened. Patches slowly extended one paw toward a cooling bowl of batter sitting nearby.
Focus. Small correction. Not panic. Control.
The hatchling hesitated. Then, trembling, he reached out with one tiny claw. The batter shimmered. A warm amber glow spread through it. This time, the magic held steady. The violent surges throughout the kitchen began to weaken. Across the room, Fate's Scold stepped forward at last. She raised one hand, murmuring ancient words so soft they almost disappeared beneath the crackle of the ovens. Threads of pale silver light drifted from her fingertips, weaving through the amber storm. Wherever they passed, the chaotic magic steadied, settling into calm, controlled warmth. The floating frosting ribbons slowly descended. The sugar crystals lost their violent spin. The roaring ovens quieted. One by one, the enchanted flames stabilized. The storm was ending. Bradicus exhaled and lowered the heavy serving tray he'd been using as an improvised shield. He surveyed the wreckage. Shattered bowls. Burnt caramel. Flour coating nearly every surface. Half the kitchen looked as though a bakery had declared war.
Well, that could have gone worse.
Really? How?
It could have reached the coffee stores.
Java visibly paled.
Don't even joke about that.
At last, the glow faded completely from the hatchling's ridges. He sagged against Nyved, exhausted. For a moment he simply lay there, breathing hard. Then he gave one tiny uncertain chirp. Nyved looked down at him. The little dragon's eyes were wide with guilt. He looked from the destruction around the kitchen back to Nyved as though finally realizing what he had caused. Nyved glanced at the wreckage. Then at Java. Then at Patches. Then back at the trembling hatchling in his arms. And for the first time that day, he understood exactly what Bradicus had meant. Responsibility wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about staying when things went wrong. Nyved gently adjusted his grip and gave the hatchling a small, reassuring smile.
Yeah. You're helping clean all of this up.
The hatchling gave a weak but unmistakably relieved chirp. And despite the flour, the caramel, the scorched countertops, and the utter destruction surrounding them, everyone in the kitchen smiled. The cleanup lasted well into the evening. What had once been a respectable kitchen now looked like the aftermath of a pastry-themed siege. Flour coated nearly every surface in a pale dusting. Hardened caramel clung stubbornly to countertops and cabinet handles. A thin shimmer of sugar crystals still sparkled in the cracks between the floor stones despite repeated sweeping. The tavern itself had survived remarkably well. Thanks to Bradicus' quick response and Fate's steadying magic, the chaos had never spilled beyond the rear kitchen. Most of the afternoon customers had remained blissfully unaware that just beyond the swinging kitchen door, disaster had nearly been baked into existence. By sunset, the last mugs had been washed, the final guests had gone, and Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern settled into the warm quiet that only came after a long day honestly earned. The great hearth burned low. The scent of fresh coffee had faded beneath lingering cinnamon and caramel. and gathered near the fire, the tavern's unlikely family sat in the comfortable exhaustion that follows surviving something together. Nyved sprawled across the floor with his wings half folded around his sides. Java sat beside him, carefully polishing one of the brass brewers despite looking moments from falling asleep himself. Patches occupied her usual chair, mending a singed kitchen towel with patient precision. Bradicus leaned against one of the heavy support beams, arms folded, his expression unreadable save for the faint amusement still lingering in his eyes. Fate Skuld sat quietly near the hearth, her pale gaze fixed on the flames as though reading something only she could see. And at the center of them all, curled between Java and Nyved atop a folded blanket, the hatchling slept. He had lasted less than 5 minutes after the cleanup ended. One tiny foreclaw rested across Nyved's tail. His small salmon-colored ridges rose and fell with slow, even breaths. Now and then, he gave faint sleepy chirps, as though dreaming of whatever adventures existed in the mind of a dragon barely old enough to understand the world around him. Nyved looked down at him and carefully adjusted one wing, draping it more securely over the little dragon. Java noticed. A quiet smile touched his face.
You're getting protective.
I'm practical. He's warm.
Of course.
Nyved didn't bother defending the obvious lie. Across the room, Bradicus gave a knowing grunt.
Funny. That's the same excuse Java used our first winter here. Last year.
That was different.
Of course it was.
The hatchling shifted in his sleep and let out a soft snuffling sound. Then his nose twitched. Slowly, sleepily, he rolled onto his back. A tiny strain of hardened caramel was still stuck to one side of his snout. Patches laughed softly.
Well, that explains a few things.
The caramel?
The kitchen behavior, the sugar fixation, the way his magic reacted to sweets.
You think that's what he is?
I'm fairly certain.
You say that like this is a thing people normally know.
It's rare, but not unheard of.
She nodded toward the sleeping hatchling.
Legends say dessert dragons are strongly tied to confectionery magic. Sugar, spice, heat, precision. They're naturally drawn to sweet craft. And when they're young, they're unpredictable.
That's one word for it.
Explosively enthusiastic feels more accurate.
The hatchling gave another sleepy chirp and smacked his lips, as if hearing the word dessert in his dreams. Bradicus studied him for a long moment. Then a slow grin spread beneath his beard.
Makes a mess. Steals sweets. Causes absolute havoc. And somehow still looks pleased with himself.
The hatchling snorted softly in his sleep. Patches smiled.
A snook, then.
A what?
Old catfolk term. Roughly translates to small troublemaker with no intention of apologizing.
That fits disturbingly well.
Snooks?
As though he had been waiting for the question, the hatchling let out a happy little chirp without opening his eyes. Everyone went still. Then Nyved laughed.
Well, guess that settles it.
Could have been worse.
How so?
I was considering caramel catastrophe.
Java groaned. Patches laughed. Even fate allowed the faintest smile. At last, she lifted her gaze from the hearth and looked toward the sleeping dragon curled safely between the two older dragons. The firelight reflected softly in her pale eyes.
Some bonds arrive with thunder. Others arrive covered in flour and caramel.
Either way, family tends to make an entrance.
No one replied. No one needed to. Because they're in the warmth of the dying fire, with flour still clinging to scales and caramel still stuck to the floorboards, the truth of it settled quietly over them all. What had begun as responsibility had become something more. The little dragon had not simply been placed in their care. He had become theirs. And though none of them yet knew just how much joyful chaos Snooks would bring to Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern in the days ahead, one thing was already certain. This family had just grown by one very sticky member. And at Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, that was exactly the sort of beginning worth brewing for.
Don't forget to hit the like button.
Yeah! And maybe drop a comment. It's like getting something in the mail. Gotta love getting some mail from your friends, right?
Maybe they don't like us, Nyved. You shouldn't expect everyone to like us.
Not like us? Inconceivable. Who doesn't like a team as amazing as us? Or baby dragons at the very least.
We must let them decide. We can only play our part. And hope.
The fire is low, the mugs are empty, and tonight's tale has come to an end. But the journey is far from over. Thank you for gathering with us at Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where adventure brews with every sip. Join us next time as new challenges arise, mysteries deepen, and the magic of the tavern unfolds. If you enjoyed this taste of adventure, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode. We'll save a seat for you at the tavern. See you soon.